Welcome back, everybody, to the audio edition of the Rock and Blues Experience. And coming up, we're going to be hearing tales from Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, Foghat, Hawkwind, Poison, Atomic Rooster, Quiet Riot, on what it was like to appear at Ozzy Osbourne's final show at Villa Park just a couple of months ago. Before we get there, just a quick reminder that you can watch all of the exclusive video content on the Rock and Blues Experience website at www.therockandbluesexperience.com, or on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel as well. I'm currently showing, we've got exclusive features with Steve Hackett, who looks back at his 50 years as a solo artist, celebrating this year, in fact, and some Genesis tales as well thrown in there, like, for instance, what it was like to play on the college circuit back in the early 70s. Now, this doesn't really exist anymore today, but it did find them playing at venues that included Eton College. Yeah, Eton College, and Cheltenham Ladies College. Can you imagine a couple of hairy rock bands turning up in these seats of education? Incredible. Also, we have an exclusive chat with Atomic Rooster, who are back after a 4-decade hiatus. They have a new album, so will the son, Steve Boltz Bolton, who was in the band back in those halcyon days of the 70s, alongside Chris Farlow, the legendary Chris Farlow, for the album Made in England. So he's on the show as well. And coming up next week, you'll be able to see an exclusive feature with Barclay James Harvest. Yes, John Lees is going to join us. He, of course, was one of the founder members of the band. They've got a brand new album out. It's called Relativity, and it's a great album again as well. So check that out. It's going to be out in the middle of October. Again, all this is video content, and it is only available on the website, YouTube, or Facebook. Back to the here and now and the today. Back in 1980, Joe Lynn Turner was sat at home in his New York apartment, out at work and counting the cents. Ritchie Blackmore and Rainbow, on the other hand, were looking to follow up their most successful album to date. It was called Down to Earth, which delivered the highest chart positions for an album, and 2 huge singles, All Night Long and Since You've Been Gone, which is still part of FM classic rock radio even today. But Graham Bonnet was gone, and they were looking for a new voice.
Just when you're running out of everything, money, etc., you get this phone call. And it was like, there was this American guy named Barry Ambrosio from Long Island, he said. I didn't know him, but he knew me. And he was saying that he was sitting next to Ritchie Blackmore. And I figured, this is one of my friends really having me on, pulling my leg. Really, I did. You know, I mean, I was cursing a bit at him and stuff and saying, come on, man. You know, he goes, no, seriously. I said, well, then put him on, you know, very arrogantly. And he did. Passed the phone to him, and I heard, hello, mate. And I was like, yeah, and which one is this? You know, who are you? Which one of my friends is this, disguising his voice? He said, no, this is really Ritchie. And I said, really? I still didn't believe him. Anyway, he got to the point where he says, I like your voice and all this. And we started talking. He said, are you familiar with Rainbow? And I said, a little. I said, I'm deeply familiar with Purple because, you know, I said they were my favorite band. And I'm playing along and I'm still suspicious. So he said, well, I'm going to put you on to our road manager, Colin Hart, because we want you to come to the studio here in Long Island and audition. So I said, what the hell? I'm auditioning all around New York City. I might as well check it out and see if this is real. Still being suspicious. So Colin got on the phone and gave me directions, get on a train and then pick me up and so on and so forth. And I walked into the studio and there he was. Sitting at the desk was Blackmore and Glover. and and that was that was a knockout right there.
So then you're in the studio, you get into the booth, you take up the mic. Were there any nerves, or was it just adrenaline that was pumping?
Well, we talked for no more than 10 minutes with just small talk and things like that. And then they said, well, get in there, and sing. So I said, all right, what do you. So I got on the mic and I said, so what do you want me to sing? So they said, you improvise, right? And I said, of course. And I had with me my bag. Like I always carried a travel bag with you name it. But inside the bag was stacks of lyrics, because whenever I would get an idea, I would kind of jot it down. So they started throwing these just instrumental tracks at me, and I started to pull out different lyrics because I like the lyrics to kind of fit the music. I think the Beatles had a unique ability to do that. First you hear what it sounds like, and then you say, well, this is certainly not a happy song, or this is not a such and such and all that. So I started to fit some lyrics with the tracks, and they kept changing tracks, and I kept changing lyrics, and pretty soon they brought out this song called I Surrender.
And the rest, as they say, was history. That was it. Was the end for Rainbow. After Bent Out of Shape, all eyes, of course, were on the Deep Purple reunion. But Joe left a really solid legacy. I saw them a good few times during that period, and they never disappointed. And he was with them through that period where they reached a commercial peak. And if you want to see what they were like at their commercial peak, Around Them with Jolene Turner, Straight Between the Eyes, Live Between the Eyes. The video or DVD was filmed in San Antonio. Or if you can't find that, then get hold of a copy of the final vinyl, the final concerts in Japan, with that epic version of Difficult to Cure with the Japanese Philharmonic Orchestra. It was absolutely magnificent. Richie Blackmore in incredible form. Now, just staying with the auditions, have you ever had a really bad interview or a really bad audition? Richie Kotzen did when he auditioned to join the multi-platinum arena band Poison back in the 1990s. It went so badly that he didn't think he'd got the gig, as he explains here.
Because I don't think they were convinced at that point. I think they said, who is this fucking clown? The amp exploded. He doesn't know where it's supposed to get him out of here. Yeah. But, Brett went to bat for me. And then I remember I was rehearsing with him for 2 weeks, learning stuff, writing, messing around. And I didn't know if I was in the band or not. And here's the other bit I'll tell you that I never told this, which is very funny. We're sitting, they had their own room out in the valley. And we're sitting there. And Brett starts saying, all right, well, let's have a conversation. Now, I don't know it, but he's going to tell me that I have the gig. But I don't know that. He starts talking, and the way he's talking, I start anticipating that he's going to tell me it was a nice lunch and I'll see you later. So I interrupt him. I say, hey, listen, I said, I know I'm probably not your guy, So I start getting ready to pack my shit up and leave. And he goes, no, wait. He says, that's not what I'm saying. He says, what I'm saying is, how do you feel like about headlining arenas and making millions of dollars? That was his quote to me. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, huh? He goes, you got the gig. You're in the fucking band. That's what he's finally. He's like, you're in the fucking band. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, then, everybody hugged everybody, and that was it. But, that's a story I never told. Hopefully, people are interested.
Hilarious. Can you imagine getting in there? You've got your big break. You're there. You've got all your kit. You plug it in. You flip the switch and it blows up. Brilliant. Richie Kotzen, fabulously talented musician. Out with Adrian Smith Kotzen, on tour very soon. New album's out as well. If you haven't heard it, do, because it is very good. Now, as we know, the music world has been mourning the loss of Ozzy Osbourne recently. But what was it like to perform at that event at Villa Park, the last ever live performance of that original quartet from Black Sabbath? Dave Ellefson was there, and he described what it was like to be involved. What was the atmosphere like from a musician's point of view?
Dave has a great answer for this. I love it. I know where Dave is going to answer this because I've already heard this answer, and it's fantastic.
I hope I remember the answer. Shit, no,
the way you kind of corralled the day, it was such an amazing response to. I felt like I was there when David replied to that exact question a few times already.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was exactly as you saw it online, exactly as it was on the live stream. It felt like that, and it's. When you're there for celebrating someone's life, which is what it was, It was a celebration of life. We knew the peril that Ozzy was facing with his illness. They had been very transparent about that. So, but to know that this was going to be the last time we see Ozzy with his band, with both of his bands, and with Black Sabbath, the fact that I love the fact that with Black Sabbath, they went back and they got the OGs, all four of the original guys, to be back in the room together. They started with those four, they ended with those four. I thought that's the way it's done. They set a new gold standard of how to do a farewell,
Absolutely.
how to do that, which is great. Also, I think when you're there as a charity. Where all men are equal, all men and women are equal backstage, on the stage. Clearly Black Sabbath and Ozzy were the headliners. Quite honestly, the songs were the headliners. Those songs were bigger than all of us, and are going to live beyond all of us, as well as our own songs. So suddenly there's no. I thought I was headlining. Where's my limo? Where's my dressing room? All these kind of things that can happen, when you get a lot of, the big leaguers in the same room together. There was none of that. I mean, and everybody was such a fan of everybody else, and we're all friends. Yeah. We all grew up together,
That's the line I was waiting for.
Yeah, we're all friends together. We all shared the same record collection together, to talk to Guns N' Roses about their choice of Sabbath tunes, to bro down with Pantera and Rival Sons and Black Sabbath, and Steven Tyler shows up. It's like, Steven's just a member amongst members. He's just another singer on the stage. You know what I mean? It's like, this guy's one of the most famous people here in the place. And next thing you know, a Rolling Stones out on stage. You're like, geez, it's like, it just doesn't stop coming. And everybody was just a member amongst members, and that, I've never been part of something like that was that awesome. I mean, look, when we did the Big Four, to Metallica's credit, they made it feel like that too. They made it feel like we were all together. We were all in it together. We were all brothers who grew up, and we were all there, as one. I've had that experience with them, and again, Metallica, they know what they're doing,
It's a family affair, yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing happened, I guess because we were there for almost a week doing the rehearsals. We were there hanging out, people from the A group would come see the B group, and we'd all hang out together and sit and bullshit and watch each other practice. Because we were all going, I remember Robert Trujillo was there, when I was doing Sweet Leaf, and it's like he played with Ozzy, and, I'm going, fuck. I was kind of looking at him like, is this right? Is this, fuck it, I got to grab a pick. I'm a pick player. Why am I trying to play like Geezer? Give me a freaking pick. I'm David Ellefson. This is how I do it. And that's what they want. They don't want you to be somebody else. They want you to be you, and so it was just a lot of great, a lot of these guys had played with, Adam Wakeman, Mike Borden, Rudy Sarzo. These guys had played with Ozzy and Sabbath and these guys, but everybody was there, to just be as one. And that's, no matter how we go in, we come out as one voice. And I thought that was a beautiful thing.
And you know what? It was the perfect ending to the perfect day was the family moment backstage when you saw Kelly and Sid getting engaged, and Ozzy's razor sharp where you can, I can't believe you think you're marrying my daughter.
I know. It was
just she blocked David from getting his photo with Ozzy. The last photo he could have taken with Ozzy.
He waved me over, and he looked great. He was just beaming after the show. He saw me, waved me over. We're talking for a couple of seconds, for I don't know, a few not minutes, because everybody wants a piece of the guy, So I was just having just talking very kindly as performers who had just done a gig together. You know what I mean? It was like, hey man, good set. It was really cool. It was great. You pulled that. It was great. You nailed it. You really did a good job. And then next to Jack's like, all right, everybody, he's whistling. Everybody keep it down. And I was like, oh, fuck, now what's going on? Next thing you know, Sid drops to his knee. There's the proposal. It was just one just unbelievable gold nugget after another, falling out of the sky on that one. And it was just, it was just really was a surreal thing to be part of.
That was Dave Ellefson with Jeff Scott Soto on the recent show. And again, just a reminder, you can watch the full video exclusive of that on the website, YouTube, or Facebook. Now, hard rock and heavy metal was peaking around Europe in the early 80s. The US, though, it was still playing catch-up. Then, all of a sudden, that explosion of bands swept through the country, and in February of 1983, there was a landmark moment when Quiet Riot, literally out of nowhere, their 78 debut and the subsequent live albums only appeared in Japan, but Metal Health was a real groundbreaker. It was Kevin DuBrow, Carlos Cavazo, Rudy Sarzo, Frankie Bernali, and Chuck Wright delivered what was the first ever heavy metal album to top the US chart. Chuck Wright looked back at those groundbreaking times.
In that period of time, right then, it was bands like the Knack, the Motels, the Fix, In Excess, that kind of thing was what was going on. And at that time, I also ended up playing with a band called DuBrow, which was Kevin DuBrow from the Randy Rhoads era, Quiet Riot. And I started playing bass with him and doing demos. And we started playing for record labels. And finally, we got signed. And a lot of those demos ended up being the Mental Health record, which is why I'm the bass player on Bang Your Head, Don't Want to Let You Go, and I sing on every track on that album. Yeah.
Did you have any feeling that album, whilst you were doing it, whilst you were all putting it together, that it would be something of a defining moment for the genre, heavy metal? Because, as we all know, it went on to become the first ever '1 heavy metal album on the Billboard charts, which was a big, big thing.
Yeah, it changed the fabric of the whole music scene where it was like I was saying, it was all the new wave bands that suddenly all the record companies wanted to sign bands with big hair and played hard rock. What I thought personally at the time, I didn't think it would sell 5 copies, let alone 10 million. I mean, only because not because it wasn't good and done well. It's just that music was not in at all. It was like not any more than my prog band was in. It was the same thing. It was like, what, I didn't, in fact, we're listening to the record and, the tracks and stuff. And I got into an argument along with the producer with Kevin about doing Come On Feel the Noise. And he just was very resistant to it. He didn't want to do any outside material. And I said, Kevin, really, seriously, sit back. Do you hear anything that you would think is a CHR hit song? And CHR is contemporary hit radio, something that's going to be on pop radio station. Do you hear anything that can make this? And I go, seriously, this song at least has a super catchy chorus, and we're talking about it. It's a Slade song. A lot of people think it was a Quiet Riot song, but it's not. It's a Slade song. But he succumbed, and look, sure enough, that's the song that blew open the doors for everybody, for all the rock bands like Rat, Cinderella, the list goes on. They would not have happened if it were for that song. who knows what would have happened? I don't really know.
Now, Atomic Rooster are our guests on the video show, which you can watch on Facebook, the website, and YouTube. Steve Boltz Bolton was this young hotshot player of the time. He was thrust into the limelight with immediate tours of the US, festivals and recording. It was non-stop. Now here, he remembers a day that he and the band would be appearing at the Oval Cricket Ground, alongside the headliners The Who and Rod Stewart and the Faces. Now, first thing you don't want to be is late. What was the day like for you? Because, you know, I mean, it's The Who, it's Rod Stewart and the Small Faces, there's America playing, there's Linda Spot. I mean, what a lineup of bands.
So I'm sleeping in some friends' flat in Muswell Hill in North London. I know nothing about this. We come back. I know nothing about jet lag. All I know is that when I come back, one of the guys whose flat it was a guy called James Litherland, who I went to school with, and he came down from Manchester a year before me and got in. He ended up in Colosseum. So James.
Oh yeah.
He played lead guitar and vocals for Colosseum. So I got them tickets and everything, but I know we were on stage at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock something in the afternoon. I woke up at 4 o'clock in Muswell Hill on the sofa, and I thought, and I couldn't quite get my head together. I thought, shit. So to get to the Oval, I had to run up to Highgate Tube Station with my guitar, and I ran up there and I got on the tube down to the Oval, ran round to the Oval. I had a guitar shoved in me. I look like I've just woken up. And I'm shoved on stage. I'm plugged into Pete Townshend's high watt stacks, and we did the gig. You know, that's what I remember.
It's brilliant. And Steve tells an even better story than that, actually, and you can hear it on the video. He talks about the time over in the US on that first US tour that he did when he got rather waylaid partying with the drummer from Buffalo Springfield who picked him up as he was hitchhiking, bizarrely. And he ended up falling asleep after overindulging, shall we say, and he completely missed a gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Now, a few years on from that, when John Bonham had sadly passed away and Led Zeppelin were no more, another Bonham, Deborah Bonham, was deciding whether or not she wanted a career in the music industry, whether it would be good for her. So, step forward Robert Plant, who offered Deborah some sage advice.
He did say, and I think this was a very important thing for me and has been throughout my career, he did say, you know, what are you going to do about the name? Because you're going to get everyone come after you. And of course, I was young and looked good then, you know, and all of that. And he said, you're going to have all these people come after you and it's going to be Zeppelin related. And I thought about it and I said, but it is my name, you know. And I thought, no, I can't do that. So I thought, I better be bloody good. You know? There's no half measures here. If I'm crap, then I've just got to stop. You know, I better make sure I listen to the Ant Peoples every day, you know. Well, that's, you know, and I've met everyone, you know. I've met them wanting to make me do disco versions of Led Zeppelin with dancers behind me and, you know, oh
my God. Do you remember Dread Zeppelin?
Yeah, I do remember Dread Zeppelin.
Best advice he gave you was get out there and earn your dues in a live environment. You were 19 and you still have the letter that he wrote you with that advice on it. On the Wolverhampton Wanderers stationery.
That's amazing. Yes, I do.
You've still got it.
He gave me £100 to go and for the. Oh no, not £100. He wouldn't know that. He wouldn't have given me that. No, he did. He gave me £100 to go and get myself together and get up to the General Wolf, it was called, in Coventry.
Yeah.
And he said, go and get yourself a gig at the General Wolf. Here you are. Here's a bit of expenses to get yourself together and go and do it. So, yeah, I've still got that. And
That's brilliant.
And I did. And then, of course, since we've played together, you know, which has been brilliant. He decked for me, bless his heart. The audience could not believe it. We played Blackpool Blues Festival last year or something like that. And I had the worst flu and laryngitis. I mean, I was really hanging. I was so bad. And so anyway, I thought I've got to try and get through this. Robert called me up and he said, I'm going to come up and see you. I said, no, I'm going to be dreadful. He said, no, I'll come up. So I said, do you fancy getting up? He said, yeah, I'll get up and do one. He gave me £100 to go and get myself together and get up to the General Wolf, it was called, in Coventry. Yeah. Of course, I did about 2 songs. I couldn't sing anymore. And I went, no, my special guest, Robert Plant, and the audience. They didn't know that this was going to happen. Went absolutely mental. I just went down the road of too much alcohol and and taking stuff, you know. And a lot of it was rooted in the fact that I never really got over the grief. And every time I started to try and get forward a little bit. I mean, with Led Zeppelin, you're never allowed to forget. And it's only really now that I'm starting to deal with stuff that, you know, as soon as I start getting a bit maudlin, I'm out on the horse or I'm walking the dogs and you know, and I'm smelling the coffee. I'm actually out there thinking, well, actually, this is a beautiful world. And I think now that I'm older, I'm realizing that, you know, these things happen in life and no one's immune to it. Everyone has their stuff going on, which is why, going back to the beginning, it is so great to be involved in this for Ian Grant and Parkinson's disease, because if we can do one little bit of good in our corner, whatever we can do as one human being in our corner. So I went back, I'd saved all my contracts and I went back and got all my rights back.
That was Deborah Bonham. And if you ever get a chance to see Bonham Bulick, or you've not heard any of their recent output, then go and check them out on any of the streaming providers and get along to watch them. They're superb. She has such a fabulous voice. Moving on, Foghat, a British blues band that was huge in the US, not huge in the UK. 3 of the first 4 albums they did were gold in the US. Then in 75 came the first platinum album. It was called Fool for the City. And on it was an 8-minute track called Slow Ride. Now the band thought that this would make a really good single. The record company stifled a laugh or two, but then the magic happened. It was cut to 356 as a single, and it became a huge hit. Roger Earl was on the show, and he looked back to the time of the release of the album and the single.
And Paul Fishkin said, no, you can't have an 8-minute single.
Now tell me, you're not a singles band, right? So when you're holed up in Sharon in Vermont, why did you have such a strong feeling that this 8.5-minute Slow Ride was going to be a hit? And how did you change Paul Fishkin's mind down at Bearsville when he just looked at you and go, nah, for 8.5 minutes? So why did you think it was going to be a hit, and how did you change his mind?
Well, up to that point, the band never picked singles. That was up to the record company, because, you know, you make the best records you can and the best songs you can. Nick Jameson, the rest of the band had left. Nick Jameson and I were up at Sharon, Vermont, where we recorded it, doing the final mixing. I wasn't really involved in the mixing. I would bring Nick a cup of tea and some biscuits or something, but you know, and say stuff like, "Can you turn the drums up a little bit?" No. So Nick and I packed up the station wagon with all this stuff, drove back down to Bearsville. I had a house I was living with my girlfriend there in Woodstock, and we went in to see Paul Fishkin and said, and played it for him. We mixed that, and the B-side was Save Your Lovin' off the first album. Just those two songs were mixed. And Paul Fishkin said, you can't have an 8-minute single. And we said, yes, we can. And initially it came out as 8 minutes, but the radio stations would shorten it. Some of them didn't. Some of them were cool enough. That was back in when it was still FM radio everywhere. They would play a 7 or 8 minute tune and go, Foghat, 8 minutes, slow ride.
I love it. That was Roger Earl. What a great character he is. And from one great character to another, Hawkwind, led by Dave Brock, continue to be active, continue to produce very good albums indeed. And as with anybody who has spent, 6 decades or more now in this business, there are many stories to tell. So, how about one with, police raids, impounded equipment, alleged tax evasion, and a very special guest live on stage who was coming in from a state penitentiary. Just another average week in the life of Hawkwind. I remember the 1999 party that you did in 1974, a benefit gig up at the University of California at Berkeley. And it was that guy, Timothy Leary, who was in prison. Yeah. And he was planning an escape, which involved Hawkwind performing, being suspended from a helicopter above the prison to cause a diversion. You just don't get that today, do you?
Well, I think it sounds like a bit of a fantasy story there. His wife, Joanna, was actually... he was phoning from the prison on the prison phone so that he could give a speech. So we're halfway through the show and we stopped. And Joanna come on and said, "Look, everybody, I've got a direct line to Timothy in his prison." Everybody all shouted and cheered with delight. So he started, going, "I want you to turn on, tune in, and drop out." Okay, everybody, and he was going for a big explanation. All of a sudden, it was cut off. And what happened was the police actually raided our dressing room as well and bundled us all and Joanna and said, "Look, because it was in Berkeley University at the time, this doesn't happen here." And I think later on we were arrested. I think we were in Hammond in Indiana.
Tax bill.
Tax bill, yeah. They thought we'd get them one way or the other. And the next few, I don't know if it's a tour or later, but we had all our gear impounded and we all got arrested for a tax evasion. There's a coincidence, isn't it?
So a lot of these people that were coming to see you then still around coming to the shows, but the audiences now have a very mixed demographic. Again, when you look out and you see who's coming to the shows, there's a lot of younger people. There's families coming. It's a completely different setup to just blokes in denim and leather coming in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it should be, a safe environment for people to enjoy themselves. That's what basically we want. I mean, you think years and years ago when we used to play underneath the flyover in Notting Hill Gate, just down the road from there was some friends of ours who were at a music shop, and they used to have huge, great speakers out there playing reggae music. And I always remember you used to get a huge amount of people, all ages, from little kids, about 3 or 4, dancing around to their granddads. Everybody was dancing. And you think, well, that's what music's about, isn't it?
It's for everybody.
And that is what music is all about. What a great way to end. Dave Brock from Hawkwind. Well, that is it for this edition of the show. Just to remind you that if you've enjoyed listening to all of these clips, you can watch the video editions in full on the website, the Facebook page, and the YouTube channel. You can go to the website at www.therockandbluesexperience.com. And what is coming up, I hear you ask? Well, we will return with another collection next week, new on the YouTube, Facebook, and the website. We have a special feature with John Lees of Barclay James Harvest. And Barclay James Harvest returning with a new album called Relativity this month. Also, you can see Steve Hackett, who's there. And we are going to be talking with Ronnie Romero next week. You'll be able to see that in video form at the end of next week as well. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. If you want to get in touch, then you can do so on the YouTube page, on the Facebook page, and indeed on the website. But for the moment, from me, Tim Cable, till next time, bye-bye for now.